Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. For those who are new, welcome. My name's Monica, and today I'm talking about the 15 books that define my taste as a romance reader. This is what I like. I like surprise, secret baby. I like character growth. I like romantic suspense, age gap, rom-coms. I know, right? I like a lot of angst, age gap, emotional plots as well, twists that I don't see coming, badass heroines, morally gray heroes, amnesia tropes, second chance romances, found family is chef's kiss, okay? And I like bonkers plots. I love me a good bonkers plots. So yes, that goes along with unique stuff. So without further ado, let's just get into the books because there's 15 that I have to talk about. So the first one, and this is my romantasy, is A Court of Silver Flames because of Nesta. Nesta, her as a character, she is strong. She is driven. But also, one of the things that I love about this story is that we see her grow from a court of thorns and roses all the way to here. And we see her romance with Cassian. We see her conquer those stairs as she goes along. We see her struggle with mental health representation, which is something I also love. I love mental health representation when there's representation that's done well. And we see that here with Nesta's PTSD. And we see her growing, and we see her friends, her sisters, as she meets these friends, and she's who were survivors of SA and different abuses, and they train to become Valkyries, and they become badass heroines in this story. And Nesta conquers the Trove, and I love this story, and I love how she sacrifices stuff for her sister. I love that because we see her from A Court of Thorns and Roses being a complete horrible human being to this immortal being who does some of the most interesting things after being forced into a cauldron, her humanity taken away from her, all this stuff that she went through, and now she has to deal with everything. And then her romance with Cassian. I love her romance with Cassian. I love Feyre and Rhysand. I love their romance. Like, their romance is top. But I love Nesta's growth as a character. I love her badassness. And I love her friendship. And I love her friendship with a house. Like, if I could have that friendship with a house, I'd be all set. Like, you have no idea. Anyway, this is definitely something that's to my taste. The next one is Shadows by Kristen Proby. This is book 1 in her Bio Magic series. I am going to just say the whole series. It's about 3 sisters. The first one is Cassian and Brielle. They are hunting a serial killer, okay? Brielle sees ghosts. And the serial killer has been stalking these 3 sisters who have paranormal abilities. Brielle's the oldest. She sees ghosts. Millie, who is a hedge witch and a psychic. And then you have Daphne, who can touch things. She's a medium, and she can touch things and see the past, and she can see the past and the present after she touched things. So she has the sight. And there was a lot of psychological stuff that happened with the serial killer and with their mother as well. And it is creepy. Yeah, okay, this is creepy. And the audiobook is so freaking good. It's Samantha Brentmore, and I talked about this book on my Jason Clark video because he narrated the serial killer on this, and he did such a freaking-tastic job. I mean, he gave me goosebumps because I was like, ooh, it was so creepy, and he did such a good job. Needless to say, I highly, highly, highly recommend this series as a whole. Don't just go to the first one, go to the second one. Girls start going missing who look like Brielle, okay? And she can see the past. She can see these ghosts. So she uses her gifts to give ghost tours in the French Quarter, to give authentic ghost tours, and which I think is kind of ingenious personally. And she meets Cassian or Cash on one of these ghost tours, and they are like fated mates. And he is an FBI profiler on vacation, and he ends up helping with the investigation to find these missing girls. And it is creepy. It is creepy. And it is so good. Anyways, I highly recommend this series as a whole. This one is really, really, really good. I love the atmosphere. I love the strong characters. I love the found family aspect, because you have the three sisters, but then you have the coven who comes in, and then you have their mates who come in, and you have women who are badasses, and you have the character growth, you have the unique, and you have the romantic suspense that comes in it. And I love the paranormal part of it as well, so absolutely love it. Next one is Always Practice Safe Hex by Julia Crass. I should just put paranormal on here. I do paranormal any day of the week as well. This is Livy Savoie, and she's a witch, a natural charm and charisma, but she's also a boss lady, and she's a part of the contest for marketing, and she has to go up against Gareth Blackwater, who's a Grim. He's a Grim Reaper, okay? And Grim Reapers, he is very stoic, very... there is something very tragic about Gareth, and very dark about Gareth. And you find out way more about Grimm's as the story unfolds, and you find out this world that you thought you knew from the first few books, but you end up finding a lot more, and this one is a lot sexier than the other ones. And Lavinia, or Livy, she can hold her own, but I love how they grow. This is the thing about this book, is both of them have such good character growth. When I'm talking about chemistry, these two have chemistry off the charts, okay? There's character growth. It's not just the chemistry that makes this story pop, it's the character growth. Gareth grows so well with Lavinia and Livy throughout this book, but also without her, okay? He grows, and he has to tell his story, because he had a very tragic backstory that had abuse that happened to him. Plus Lavinia, she grows. She had this chip on her shoulder that she had to get rid of, and she had to not just rely on her sisters, but she had to learn to rely on others, and learn to rely on Gareth as well. And I just loved it. This book, if I'm gonna look for a paranormal romance, this is one of the type of paranormal romances I look for. But also, I have to say, another one that type of paranormal romance I look for, Lothair. Oh, my heart, Lothair. Okay, Lothair. This is book 11 in the Immortals After the Dark series. You really need to read these in order, because you have to get the full love of, you have to understand Lothair in order to really love this story. He is a true villain. He is evil. Morally gray, evil, horrible, horrible, evil, dark prince. Will kill you for not even looking at you, he'll just kill you. He plays everyone like the fiddle, okay? There's not really any character growth in here. However, there's a huge age gap, no doubt. What makes me love this is there is a lot of humor in this, okay? He is very pompous, very obnoxious, thinks he deserves the world, thinks that his one true mate is going to be this queen, ends up being a hillbilly girl from back Woods, Appalachia, named Elizabeth Pierce, or Ellie Pierce. And she gives him a run for his money. She is so freaking strong. And yes. Oh, 1,000 times yes. He treats her horribly, and she gives it right back to him. And I loved every second of this book. He gave her his heart. She gave him the bird. You have to read that book to understand what I mean by that, because there is a huge context to that statement, and that is so good. There's a bit of a triangle with that because Ellie is possessed, and there's a whole thing around that possession. So it is so good. He is just, you want to slap him half the time, and she wants to slap him half the time, but she loves him. There's so much, it's unique. There's so much plot twists. There's some twists and turns of this. He's not morally gray. He's just black. Like, he is not a good, he's evil. He is a villain, but he gets his happily ever after. But it's a good one. Anyway, I love this. One of my absolute favorites. Moving on from that type of story though, for my rom-com loving heart, one of my absolute favorites, and I will die on this hill. I know a lot of people love Megan Quinn, and I do like Megan Quinn, but I have to say Jana Aston. Jana Aston, I love Jana Aston. I will read anything Jana Aston writes. She writes such good secondhand embarrassment, great billionaires. She writes law enforcement. She writes British boys. She writes quirky heroines. And my first one was Wrong. And this one, our heroine, Sophie, had a crush on a guy that would go into her coffee shop. Come to find out, he was her gynecologist. She did not know that until she went in to get on birth control. And he had a crush on her too. This is an age gap, because he is older and well established. She knew he was older. He knew she was younger. He thought she might be in grad school because she's just about to graduate from college. One thing with Sophie though is that she was previously, before Luke, she'd always end up with the wrong guy, and then she met Luke and she felt like he was the wrong guy, but the right guy at the wrong, but it ended up being the right guy at the wrong time. Yeah, it was such a good one. And I loved the secondhand embarrassment. I loved the growth between these two. And it had Jana Aston's signature humor to it. Her humor is not for everybody, but it is for me. I love her. I love her humor. I love this book. I love all her books. I love her Facebook group, her cafe Facebook group. She has all her cats. She foster cats. She has a cat named Stinky Binky that I just fell in love with, because she fostered a cat who was near death, and back in December. She does home renovations, and she's a fantastic human being. She's one of the very few people, she's not writing right now. I don't know why, but when she writes one and puts one out, I will be buying it and I will be reading it. A lot of her books, Erin Mallon does a lot of narrations for her books, and I hope that she puts one out soon. So yeah. Another one, I love it because it's sports, and it's Secret Surprise Baby, and it's A Lie for a Lie by Helena Hunting. I love Helena Hunting. I love her humor, and I love this one. I love the fact that you get this time jump, because I don't mind the time jump. I love that our heroine has great anxiety rep in this as well. Lainey and Rook, they were in Kodiak, Alaska when they spent some time together. He had to leave very quickly after his sister-in-law had a baby after a very hard pregnancy, and he forgot to give Lainey his information. Come to find out that she was pregnant. They met at a birthday party at an aquarium, and she's like, yeah, you have a son. She named Kodiak, and we meet Kodiak in Little Lies. Anyway, I loved this book. This is Surprise Baby done so right. I love the way that Helena Hunting did Surprise Baby in this. She does Secret Baby and Surprise Baby so well. So yeah, I know this isn't Surprise Baby. This is Secret Baby, and it's done so well. And I love the humor, and I love the angstiness of it. I love the humor of it. So good. But if we're gonna talk real angst and emotional trauma, I literally just read this one last month, and it's Forget Me Not by QB Tyler. I swear I've been sleeping on QB Tyler. But this one was Bennett and Olivia's story. This one was messy and angsty, and the grovel. Oh my gosh, the grovel was so good in this one. So Bennett woke up, and I love Amnesia. He woke up after a car accident, and he didn't remember the last 2 years of his life. And he was convinced that he was still, him and Olivia were still happily married when they were not. The heartbreak that they had to go through all over again because he didn't remember that. And they had to face everything all over again. But the thing is the first time they didn't really face it. They just buried it. This time, because of the amnesia, they had to face it. And that's what I loved about this story. And oh my gosh, was it so good. And with QB Tyler, you're going to get the esteem. But this was so good. But it was very emotionally traumatizing and painful. And I gave it 5 stars. Another one that I read last month that I have to say goes to my taste, for specifically for mafia craziness, is Dom by S.J. Tilly. I love a woman with backbone. I love a man with a plan. And I love that with these type of books that you're gonna get the mafia stuff. You're gonna get the twists. You're gonna get the touching your dive vibes. You're gonna get the unhingedness. You're gonna get the jealous possessiveness that you have. I mean, he tattooed his name all the way up her ring finger. And then that toaster scene, that did it for me. And I was laughing and cheering. It was so much fun. With these type of books, you know what you're gonna get. And S.J. Tilly delivered it in this book. And that's why I loved it so much. That's why this type of book really works for me. Another book that really works for me, and I have to put it in here, if we're going to talk about a very bad and very angsty book, and a very badass heroine, and a very obsessed hero, and a good revenge plot, Tin Queen, Devney Perry. This is the last book in the Clifton Forge series. I love this series. This is my favorite Devney Perry series. If I could get you to read any Devney Perry series, this is one of the ones I'd absolutely get you to read. Nova is the daughter of the rival MC president. And she wants to put Emmett and Dash and all the brothers in jail. And so she goes to Clifton Forge and she seduces Emmett. And she doesn't have all the story because her dad doesn't tell her everything. Her dad leaves her out to dry half the time. So she's piecing things together. There's so many crazy twists to this book. There's a very found family aspect to this book. There's so much overall plot to this book that's so good. You have the revenge plot. You have the romance. You have this woman burning stuff down to get to the truth. This book is just so good. I love this series. I love the series. This series is just so good. Anyway, I highly recommend this one. I cannot give you anything. I'm not going to give you anything away. I want you to read this book. I want you to read this book so bad. Like this book, this series, if I could get you to read any series, this is the series I want you to read. But you have to read them in order. It starts with Steel King. Next one, that's to my taste, is Ashes of You by Catherine Cowles. This is book 5 in her Lost and Found series. I love this book so much. This is Lawson and Haley. This is Haley escaped a serial killer and Lawson found her. There is, again, she is taking care of his children, so she's a nanny. But there's, again, a found family. She feels like she found her place in Lawson's home. She takes care of his kids like they are her own. The way she mothers Luke, his son, is so fantastic. And then you have the suspense plot, which I guessed, but we're not going to go there because I guessed it. I guessed it 10 minutes. I'm still so proud of myself. You have no idea. I loved everything about this book. This book is gold to me. I love this book. This book is so good. I highly recommend this book. I highly recommend this series as a whole, but I loved this book the best. Anyway, as age gap has anxiety rep, it is forced proximity. It has this time jump. It has touch and you die. It has small town. It's just character growth, and it's just so good. Highly recommend it. Another one that's also to my taste is Loving Romeo by Laura Pavlos. This is book 1 in her Magnolia Falls series. This one is Grumpy Sunshine, Small Town, sports because he's a fighter, enemies to lover, opposite attract, found family. And he does not like her for her family. She wants to be his friend. She tries to get him to be his friend. He finally is like, listen. Romeo goes to Demi, he's like, listen, I can't be your friend because this, and this. And she's like, well, yes, you can be. And they end up being friends to lovers. And the found family in this is so good. And I love the training montages. I love the Rocky, because there's a lot of Rocky stuff. Talk about the movie Rocky in this story. He helps her with self-defense after stuff that happens to her. There's communication in this that's just gorgeous. I love this story. It's worth it. I love this book. Anyway, I love Nora Roberts. I had a hard time picking a Nora Roberts because I kept going back and forth between The Witness, Legacy, Hideaway, Shelter in Place, but I ended up on The Obsession. And the reason why I picked The Obsession, which isn't my actual favorite Nora Roberts, funny enough, but the reason why I picked The Obsession is because The Obsession has that scene of the little girl walking to find her father at the very beginning, and the way Nora Roberts wrote it was so atmospheric. You have the airiness, and you have the way that little girl, who is Naomi, is so strong and so resilient that she saves her father's victim. And you're there. You can feel it as you're reading from that page. And I'm like, you're viscerally there, because the way she wrote it was just like, wow. Because you could feel the way Naomi was scared, and before that, the way she was excited about possibly getting a bike for her birthday, and then going down into that cellar where the victim was, and then the anxiousness trying to get the girl to the law to save her from her father, and then you see her go through her life, and then everything that happens afterwards. And I loved it. I I loved the story. I loved the suspense. I loved the romance. It was a really, really good book. I loved Nora Roberts' romantic suspense. They are definitely to my taste. That's why I had a hard time picking just one. But the reason why I put this one on is because of the opening scene was just so visceral and so atmospheric. I had to give it to that spot. Then we have to go to historicals. And I have to give it to Love in the Afternoon because Christopher Phelan and Beatrix. Beatrix just, I love my quirky characters. I love Beatrix. She loves her animals. She has a hedgehog, and Christopher was not very nice to her before he left for the war. He was fighting in the Crimean War, and her friend Prudence was supposed to be writing to him, and she was like, she kept trying to get her friend Prudence to write to him, and she wouldn't do it. She's like, I don't want to write to him. So Beatrix, pretending to be Prudence, decided to write to Christopher, and Christopher was writing to Beatrix, thinking he was writing to Prudence. He fell in love with Beatrix, and Beatrix fell in love with him, but he thought he was falling in love with Prudence. Plot twist. Anyway, when he came home, Beatrix was in her male breeches with her animals, trying to help her animals. He had a dog named Albert, and she helped Albert acclimate to non-war, and he was like, you can't do that. He had to figure out that it wasn't actually Prudence he was writing to, that it was Beatrix. And her heart was broken because she thought that he was going to pick Prudence over her. And I just loved it. I love the Hathaways. The Hathaways is one of my absolute favorite. The Hathaways and the Wallflowers. I know everybody loves the Ravenels. The Ravenels are fantastic, but the Wallflowers and the Hathaways are my favorites. I have to give it to both. Are equal in my eyes. But I love Beatrix and her hedgehog and her ferrets and the fact that she has goats and everything else, and that she's walking around in male breeches and taming animals. And it freaked Christopher out that she was riding horses when she shouldn't have been riding horses. And the character growth and the fact that they had to learn to work with each other because he couldn't stand the fact that she could possibly get hurt. He had to learn to open up to her because, again, this had PTSD rep. Very, very, very good and very, very real PTSD rep. And he's like, I don't want to marry you because I don't want to hurt you. And she's like, well, I'm going to marry you because I love you and there's nothing you can do about it. And she's like, I'm going to be there for you. And that's just it. I loved that Beatrix was such a strong heroine, and that she was resilient, and that she was never going to bend to society's standards. And I love that Christopher eventually figured that out about her and saw that in those letters, that's what he fell in love with, was her resilience and who she was, and that they both had their struggles. So that is one of my absolute favorite historicals. Another one of my favorite historicals is The Wolf and the Wildflower. This is such a unique story. This is one of my top reads of 2023. This one is about James and Jules. They were soulmates. James was a duke who was lost in the Canadian wilderness, came back. Jules was supposed to be a boy, was born a girl. Oops. Mom could not have another baby, so she pretended that Jules was a boy so Jules was living as a man until she met James. James ferreted it out very quickly that she was a girl by scent, and he's like, I'm gonna work with him. And he's like, I know your secret. And they ended up striking up a friendship and a romance. And it was such a uniquely gorgeous story. And my thing is, the reason why I love this story so much is that both of them did grow, unique, but they also were willing to give up something for the other just so they could be together, which is so unique. And I loved it. Loved this story. And the last book, and I have to give this one to Samantha, the gorilla brothers. They're gorilla twins. She calls it the gorilla twins, which makes me so laugh so hard. Because it's so true. It's the gorilla twins. It's The Earl Takes All by Lorraine Heath. I love Lorraine Heath with the gorilla twins. Holy crap, that is awesome. Okay, so Edward and Julia did not like each other. So Edward goes to with his brother to Africa. Edward pokes a gorilla. His brother ends up getting killed. His brother Edward is the Earl. His brother asks him to pretend to be the Earl because he pretends to be him because his wife has had miscarriages and he didn't want anything to happen to his wife. And so Edward, who says, okay, fine, I will pretend to be you. Well, he goes back, pretends to be the Earl. Everybody thinks that he's dead. And he's like, hey, not everybody liked me. Imagine going to your own funeral and everybody's like, yeah, he was okay, I guess. Anyway, I was listening to that part. I was like, oh my gosh, that's so interesting. Anyway, Edward has had feelings for Julia for a long time, but his brother had married her first. They end up falling in love. And this is why that's why Samantha calls it the gorilla twins. But this is so angsty because each brother loved this woman. And so he had to pretend to be his brother for a while. And then Julia eventually figures out the whole ruse, right? And she's like, were you ever going to tell me I'm no longer the Countess? And he's like, well, but by this point, Julia fell in love with Edward. And at this time, you could not marry your brother's widow. So some things had to be worked out. The angst was so perfect in this. The story was unique. The character growth was so good in this book. I loved it. So anyway, those are 15 books that definitely define my taste. So let me know if we have any comment down below. And if you made this far in this video and you want to let me know that you've been here, please leave me a gorilla emoji since we talked about the gorilla twins. And until next time, my friends, happy reading. Bye.